Imagine spotting your stolen anniversary necklace on the COO of your husband's company in a viral TikTok from last night's gala. That's the moment Madison Cross realizes her perfect life is a setup. The gaslighting, the frozen accounts, even her kids turned against her. But Madison didn't marry a shark to learn fear. She learned strategy. In 5 days, a birthday party becomes the battlefield. Live stream confessions, fake badges, a secret half-sister with a badge of her own, and a husband with a name that isn't his. Data isn't just currency, it's a weapon. And the guest list? It's not who you think. It's 47 families, 5 decades of bought power, and one woman determined to burn it all down. Follow Madison from marble kitchens to prison cells, from a rose garden hiding a key to Swiss boxes that rewrite American history. Every twist you guess will be wrong, on purpose. If high-stakes revenge, shadow governments, and mothers who won't break are your thing, you're in the right place. Tap like to boost the story, drop your boldest comment on who's really pulling the strings, share this with a friend who loves jaw-drop twists, and subscribe so you don't miss the moment when the party finally, really ends. Madison Cross stood frozen in her marble kitchen, her daughter's phone trembling in her manicured hand. The TikTok video played on repeat, each loop driving the knife deeper into her chest. There was Scarlett Rivera, Data Vault's newly appointed chief operating officer, laughing at the company gala, her slender neck adorned with a distinctive sapphire necklace, Madison's 20th anniversary gift from Tyler. "Mom, are you okay?" 16-year-old Emma reached for her phone, but Madison had already seen enough. "Fine, sweetheart," Madison managed, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. 22 years of marriage, 2 children, and an empire built from her trust fund and connections, reduced to this moment of recognition. The kitchen island where she'd helped Tyler write his first business plan seemed to mock her now. Every surface in their $12 million Connecticut estate whispered of her contributions, her sacrifices, her blindness. Tyler walked in, still in his running gear, endorphins making him careless. "Morning, beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek with lips that had probably touched another woman hours before. Madison studied him with new eyes. 45 years old, still handsome in that aggressive Wall Street way, silver threading through his dark hair like earned wisdom he didn't actually possess. How many lies had that mouth told? "How was the gala last night?" she asked, pouring coffee with hands that didn't shake. Years of boarding school had taught her that composure was armor. "Boring without you," Tyler replied smoothly. "You should have come." "My migraine," Madison reminded him. The migraine he'd known was fake, her excuse to avoid another night of watching him parade his success while forgetting to mention her name. Emma grabbed toast and escaped upstairs, teenage instincts detecting parental tension. Madison waited until her footsteps faded. "Tyler," she began, then stopped. What was the point? She'd seen how this played it out with her friends, the denials, the gaslighting, the gradual erosion of self-worth. Instead, she pulled up the TikTok on her own phone and slid it across the granite counter. His face went through a spectacular journey, surprise, calculation, then something that looked almost like relief. "It's not what you think," he said, the response so cliché she almost laughed. "My anniversary necklace?" She admired it. "I let her borrow it for the gala, for networking. You know how important image is with the Asian investors." Madison felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not rage, something more dangerous. Clarity. "I'm going to my sister's," she said simply. Tyler's expression shifted to concern, so theatrical it belonged on Broadway. "Maddie, you're overreacting. You know how paranoid you've been lately. The mood swings, the accusations. Maybe you should talk to someone." There it was, the setup. She'd watched him do this to competitors, plant seeds of doubt, establish a narrative, then execute with surgical precision. But he'd made one mistake. He'd taught her his methods. "You're right," Madison said, surprising him. "I should talk to someone. Several someones, actually." She walked upstairs to pack, each step measured and deliberate. Behind her, she heard Tyler on the phone, his voice low and urgent. By the time she reached their bedroom, had it ever really been theirs? Her phone was buzzing with notifications. Their joint bank account, frozen. Credit cards, suspended for suspicious activity. Madison sat on the bed they'd shared for 2 decades and laughed. It was a sound that would have chilled Tyler if he'd heard it. He'd fired the first shot, not realizing he'd just started a war with the woman who'd taught him everything about strategy. Her phone rang. Her father, federal judge William Hayes. "Sweetheart, Tyler just called me. He's concerned about you." The betrayal cut deeper than the affair. "Dad, he mentioned some erratic behavior. The family's reputation, Madison. We need to think about that." She hung up. Then she made a different call. "Jake Morrison, private investigations." Jake, her childhood friend who'd become something else entirely. Someone Tyler didn't know about. Her insurance policy. "It's time," she said simply. "The birthday party? 5 days. Are you sure once we do this?" "I'm sure," Madison said, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The perfect wife was already gone. Something else was emerging. He just made it easy. The Ritz-Carlton suite wasn't home, but Madison had stopped believing in that concept anyway. 4 days until Tyler's birthday gala, and she'd already lost more than she'd imagined possible. Her sister Catherine sat across from her, designer heels kicked off, bourbon neat in her hand despite it being 11 in the morning. "He's telling everyone you had a breakdown at Whole Foods," Catherine said, scrolling through her phone. "There's video." Madison didn't flinch. "Deep fake. He's been planning this for months." "The video looks real, Maddie. You're screaming at a cashier about organic tampering." "I was in Boston that day. Check my Easy Pass records." Catherine's expression shifted from concern to something sharper. "He's that sophisticated?" "He owns a data analytics company worth $3 billion, Katie. He has resources I'm only beginning to understand." Her phone buzzed, an unknown number, but she recognized the voice immediately. "Mrs. Cross?" Scarlett Rivera's honey-sweet tone dripped through the speaker. "I wanted to reach out, woman to woman." Madison put it on speaker, nodding at Catherine to stay quiet. "How thoughtful," Madison replied. "Tyler's worried about you. We all are. This obsession with me, it's not healthy." The audacity was almost admirable. "We?" "The executive team. Your behavior is affecting the company. The board is concerned." Madison smiled for the first time in days. "The board Marcus Sterling chairs?" A pause. Scarlett hadn't expected her to engage. "Marcus especially. He thinks perhaps some time away, maybe a facility in Arizona." "For my mental health?" "For everyone's benefit." Madison ended the call. Catherine stared at her. "They're trying to have you committed?" "Page 12 of the playbook," Madison said, pulling out a leather journal filled with her handwriting. "Discredit, isolate, institutionalize." Tyler used it on his former CFO when he discovered the books were cooked. "You knew the books were cooked?" "I helped uncook them. Who do you think taught Tyler about offshore accounts?" Her phone rang again. She nearly ignored it. Another reporter, another concerned acquaintance sniffing for gossip. But the caller ID made her throat tighten. "Westbrook Academy." She answered on the second ring. The administrator's voice was too careful, every syllable chosen like it had been rehearsed. "Mrs. Cross, there's been an incident with Emma. She's safe, but we need you to come immediately." Incident, a word that was both vague and lethal. Madison's stomach hollowed. The Bentley cut through suburban streets at a speed that invited blue lights, but none came. Her hands clamped the steering wheel so tightly the leather creaked. Every red light felt like sabotage. Every minivan in the left lane, a deliberate obstacle. Her mind raced faster than the engine. What had Tyler done? He'd frozen her accounts, tried to smear her claim, planted stories of breakdowns and delusions. But Emma, their daughter, that line was untouchable, or so she had believed. By the time the red-bricked academy loomed into view, Madison's pulse was a war drum in her ears. 2 police cruisers idled in front of the school, their light bars mercifully dark, but their presence unmistakable. A small crowd of parents lingered near the flagpole, pretending to check their phones while whispering behind manicured hands. Heads turned as Madison stepped out of her car, their eyes sharp and merciless. "Is that her?" someone hissed. "Poor Emma," another murmured. "Typical Cross scandal," a third voice added. Madison lifted her chin, spine straight. Years of boarding school and galas had taught her the rule: never let them see you flinch. Still, their voices clung to her skin as she pushed through the glass doors. The scent of disinfectant and pencil shavings hit her first, sharp and strangely childish. But the scene inside the principal's office belonged in a crime drama. Emma sat in a corner chair, shoulders curled inward like she was trying to disappear into her own uniform. Mascara streaked her cheeks. Her knee bounced a frantic rhythm under the desk, heel tapping against the tile until it squeaked. Two uniformed officers stood on either side of the door, arms crossed, their presence less protective and more predatory. The moment Emma saw her, she bolted upright. "Mom!" Her voice cracked, raw with terror. She stumbled across the room and buried herself in Madison's arms. Madison pulled her in tight, feeling the tremors that racked her daughter's small frame. The scent of strawberry shampoo mixed with the salt of tears. "Mrs. Cross," Principal Matthew's voice was stiff, as though sympathy had been scrubbed from it. He gestured to a clear evidence bag on the desk. Inside, pills. Too many pills. White, blue, orange. Labels she recognized from whispered parent groups and prescription warnings. Madison's blood turned to ice. "That's impossible," she said flatly, her tone a blade meant to slice through the accusation. "The dog's alerted on her locker," one officer replied, his face impassive. "We found Adderall, Xanax, enough for distribution charges." The room tilted. Madison crouched to her daughter's level, gripping her shoulders with controlled strength. "Emma, look at me." Emma lifted her face. Her eyes were red-rimmed, lashes clumped, pupils wide with fear. Her lower lip trembled as she tried to form words. "Mom, I swear, I don't know how they got there. I would never." Her voice broke, collapsing into sobs that racked her chest. Her arms wrapped around herself, nails biting into the skin of her forearms like she could hold herself together through sheer force. Madison believed her instantly. Not because she wanted to, denial had no use here, but because she knew the cadence of Emma's truth. This wasn't rehearsed. This was her daughter's raw terror. "Of course you wouldn't," Madison whispered, tucking a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. But inside, her fury calcified. Tyler. Of course it was Tyler. Only he would take the one place Emma felt safe and turn it into a stage for humiliation. Madison straightened, her voice cutting through the room. "I want our lawyer before another word is said." One of the officers shifted forward, hand resting on his belt. His tone was deliberate, heavy with authority. "Actually, Mrs. Cross, we're here for you." For a second, her brain refused to process. "Excuse me? Your husband filed for a restraining order this morning. Claims of domestic violence. You need to come with us." The air in the room shattered. Emma's screams split it wide open. "No, she didn't do anything. Dad's lying." The metallic snap of handcuffs opening echoed like a gunshot. Madison's pulse thundered, but her expression stayed cool. "Armor, always armor." She bent quickly, gripping Emma's face between her palms. "Emma, listen to me. Call Aunt Catherine. Do you remember what I taught you about the emergency fund?" Emma's sobs came harder, desperate. "Mom, please, don't let them take you." She clung to her mother's wrist, nails scratching, trying to anchor her in place. "I love you," Madison said, voice unwavering even as the officers pulled her arms behind her back. "This isn't over. Do you hear me? This is not over. Call Aunt Catherine. Remember what I taught you about the emergency fund?" Emma's cries echoed down the hall as Madison was led away, wrists bound, fury locked beneath her calm exterior. Inside, though, she knew something irrevocable had snapped. Tyler hadn't just declared war. He had chosen their children as the battlefield, and Madison Cross had no intention of losing. The holding cell smelled of bleach and despair. Madison sat on a metal bench that felt colder than the marble floors of her kitchen, colder than the look in her father's eyes when he told her to think of the family. The fluorescent light above her hummed with a steady, needling buzz, casting shadows that made the cement walls feel like they were closing in. She flexed her wrists, raw where the cuffs had bitten into her skin. The orange smudges of processed paperwork still lingered on her fingers. She thought about Emma's face as the officers dragged her away, eyes wide, cheeks wet, a child begging the world to believe what it never would. The memory was more suffocating than the stale air in the cell, the silence before 5 hours passed in slow-motion fragments. A guard dropped off a paper cup of water she didn't touch. Another clanged keys against the bars, just a reminder of her place. Madison's mind, however, refused to be caged. She replayed Tyler's move in her head like a chess master analyzing a gambit. Plant evidence in Emma's locker. Humiliate Madison in front of the school community. Trigger the restraining order he'd filed in advance. Paint her as a violent, unstable mother. It was elegant in its cruelty and sloppy in its execution. Tyler was rushing. She could smell it. The door finally opened with a metallic groan. Jake Morrison walked in first. He didn't wear the jeans and leather jacket of her childhood friend. He wore the pressed suit of a man trying to keep his distance. His jaw was tight, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that told her everything is worse than you think. He sat across the steel table, a file in hand. Behind him, a uniformed guard leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "The restraining order is temporary," Jake said, voice low, "but it's effective immediately. You can't go within 500 feet of Tyler or the children." Madison's heart stuttered. "The children?" Jake slid a set of papers across the table. They signed affidavits. Her fingers trembled only once before she forced them still and turned the pages. Lucas's handwriting, her 13-year-old boy, scrawled across the statement. Words dictated, words rehearsed, erratic, violent, afraid of her. Then Emma's affidavit. Longer, more detailed. Descriptions of emotional abuse that Madison knew had never happened. Stories that dripped with Tyler's cadence, his manipulative fingerprints all over them. Madison pressed the papers flat with her palms, breathing through the rising tide of nausea. "He made them," she whispered. Or worse, he made them believe it. Jake didn't argue. He just studied her, waiting for the explosion that didn't come. The next visitor wasn't Jake. It was Detective Harper, a man with graying hair, a soft paunch, in the faint air of someone who enjoyed watching people unravel. He placed a tape recorder on the table, clicked it on, and leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Cross, do you know why you're here?" His voice was silk wrapped around steel. Madison met his gaze, unblinking. "Because my husband's afraid of losing." He arched a brow. Interesting choice of words. "He says he's afraid of you. Says you've been unstable, erratic." He mentioned violent outbursts. Madison almost laughed. Classic Tyler. Frame the crime as the cover story. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice measured. "Detective, I've been married to a man who lies for a living. I know what rehearsed testimony sounds like." He didn't blink. "Your daughter's statement says otherwise." He flipped a page for effect. "She made us spy on Dad, said he was evil, said he was planning something." Those are Emma's words, not Tyler's. For a moment, Madison's composure cracked. Emma's handwriting flashed in her mind, every loop and flourish. Tyler hadn't just planted words, he'd planted memories. "Children can be convinced of many things," she said, her voice low but steady, "especially when their father has $1 billion data empire and the ability to manufacture any reality he wants." Harper's smile was thin. "Or maybe you're the one manufacturing realities." The door opened again, and Scarlett Rivera walked in, red lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. She wore no evening gown tonight, only a sharp blazer that fit like armor. "Mrs. Cross," she purred, sliding into the chair beside Harper. "You and I need to have a little chat." Madison's stomach dropped, but she forced her face into neutrality. Scarlett's presence here meant one thing. The board wasn't just watching. They were pulling strings from inside the walls of law enforcement itself. Scarlett leaned in close enough that only Madison could hear. "He's going to announce the merger at the gala, Monday. Triton and Data Vault, 70% of North American consumer data under one roof." Madison's pulse spiked. This wasn't just marital warfare anymore. This was treason wrapped in shareholder agreements. Scarlett's smile widened. "But don't worry, you won't be there to see it. You'll be safely committed." Madison sat back, letting her laughter spill out, quiet but cutting. It startled both Harper and Scarlett. "What's funny?" Scarlett demanded. Madison's eyes glittered. "You still think Tyler's the shark." She leaned forward, lowering her brows. He's just bait, and you don't even see the hook. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. The laughter hung in the air like smoke, unsettling in its quiet defiance. Scarlett's painted smile falters for half a breath, then reassembled itself like glass glued back together. Detective Harper turned off the recorder with a click, irritation flaring in his eyes. Enough games, Mrs. Cross. You're looking at a serious escalation. Affidavits from both your children. A restraining order. Allegations of violence. It's a convincing package. Madison leaned back against the cold steel chair, her wrists still cuffed to the table. Convincing to whom? A jury, the public, or to you, detective, so you can close your file and sleep at night? Harper stiffened. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Scarlett rose smoothly, gathering her blazer around her as if the conversation had already been won. Don't worry, detective. She won't be your problem for long. There are facilities better suited for this kind of instability. Her eyes gleamed at Madison. Arizona has lovely sunsets. Madison tilted her head, studying her like a specimen. You're good at reading scripts, Scarlett, but you should have learned one rule from Tyler. Never underestimate the author. Scarlett's lips tightened. For the first time, Madison saw it. Doubt. The faintest flicker of unease. Then Scarlett turned sharply on her heel and left, heels clicking a sharp staccato against the linoleum. 2 hours later, Madison sat alone in the dimly lit cell, counting her breaths. The key wasn't anger, it was control. Anger fogged the mind, control sharpened it. She thought of Emma and Lucas, their signatures on lies they didn't understand. She thought of Tyler, already rehearsing his next grieving husband act for the cameras. She thought of Scarlett, whispering about the merger like it was already sealed. The door clanged open again. This time it wasn't Harper or Scarlett. It was Jake. He shut the door behind him, a file tucked under his arm. His tie was loosened, exhaustion lining his face. For a long moment he just looked at her, as if weighing whether to tell her the truth or the official version. You're being released, he finally said. Madison arched a brow. Just like that? Temporary, Jake clarified. The charges are weak, the evidence sloppy. Tyler rushed it. The DA doesn't want egg on his face. He dropped the file on the table. But the restraining order stands. You can't go near the kids, and you can't set foot in your own house. Legally, you're boxed in. Madison smiled faintly, the expression colder than the cell walls. Legally is where Tyler lives. Strategically is where I live. Jake sighed, rubbing his temple. Madison, if you try to crash that gala, you'll be arrested before you hit the lobby carpet. Then I won't crash it. She leaned forward, her eyes sparking with something almost feral. I'll infiltrate it. The release processing out of the holding cell was a theater of humiliation. Fingerprints smudged on forms. Her personal belongings slid across at a counter in a cracked plastic tub. The guard smirked as he handed her back her jewelry and phone. Madison put on her coat like armor, every movement deliberate. Outside, the night air hit her like ice water. Catherine's car idled by the curb, her sister behind the wheel, jaw set, eyes burning with protective fury. You look like hell, Catherine said bluntly as Madison slid into the passenger seat. I've been in hell, Madison replied. Then she buckled her seatbelt with precise calm. But I've brought back maps. Catherine shot her a glance. You're really going to do this, the gala? Yes, Madison's voice was iron, because that's where Tyler will overplay his hand. Scarlett as his fiancée, the merger announcement. His new family paraded like trophies. He won't be able to resist gloating. And you'll be there to record it, to detonate it. Back at the Ritz-Carlton suite, Madison spread documents across the bed like a general laying out battle plans. Offshore account statements, coded messages, receipts that traced bribery through half a dozen shell companies. Her leather journal lay open, pages filled with diagrams only she could decode. Catherine poured bourbon into 2 glasses and set one beside her. You've got maybe 48 hours. Less if Tyler gets wind you're out. Then we move fast, Madison said, sliding a small black device across the sheets. A recording transmitter, no bigger than a lipstick tube. This goes in my clutch. You still need entry, Madison smiled, reaching into her suitcase and pulling out a sleek black gown. Not one Tyler had ever seen, not one with his fingerprints on it. She draped it over the chair, the fabric shimmering like liquid night. I have a ticket. I paid for it years ago when I married him, and I'm going to collect. Catherine raised her glass. To war? Madison clinked her own against it. To victory. As the clock ticked toward dawn, Madison stood before the mirror, wiping away the last traces of police station grime. Her reflection was no longer the perfect wife, no longer the humiliated mother. It was something new, something dangerous. Tyler thought he'd broken her. Scarlett thought she'd caged her. The board thought they'd erased her. But Madison Cross wasn't broken. She was sharpening. And in 3 days, at Tyler's birthday gala, she would prove it. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glowed like a jewel box, every chandelier dripping with crystal, every orchid imported at obscene expense. Tyler Cross had never been subtle about his appetites. Tonight was no exception. The gala wasn't just a birthday party, it was a coronation. Madison lingered in the shadow of the service corridor, her gown clinging to her like armor, her grandmother's diamonds catching stray slivers of light. Every breath she took was measured, controlled. She was back on a battlefield, though this one was draped in silk and champagne instead of blood and steel. Jake's voice murmured in her ear, a whisper from the discreet calm hidden beneath her hair. Security's tight, more men than usual, and they're watching the exits. He's expecting you. Madison's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Good, let him. The FBI won't come unless you have concrete proof, Jake warned, adjusting his tux in the mirror. I'll get it, Madison said, pinning a small recording device inside her clutch. Tyler's ego is his weakness. He won't be able to resist confession when he thinks he's won. They arrived separately. Madison entered through the service entrance. Her connections with the staff, another thing Tyler had underestimated. The ballroom was spectacular. Ice sculptures, orchids flown from Thailand, a champagne fountain that cost more than most people's cars. And there was Tyler, holding court near the stage. Scarlett attached to his arm in a red dress that screamed victory. Madison moved through the shadows, watching. The guest list was interesting. Not just the usual suspects, but new faces. Young, hungry, social media famous types who live-streamed everything. Tyler was rebranding, she realized. Out with the old money, in with the new. Ladies and gentlemen, Tyler's voice boomed across the room as he took the stage. Thank you for joining me on this momentous occasion. Madison positioned herself behind a pillar, close enough to hear but hidden from security's sightline. 45 years old today, Tyler continued, his smile radiant. They say life begins at 40, but for me, it's beginning right now. He pulled Scarlett onto the stage. The crowd murmured. Many of you know Scarlett Rivera, our brilliant COO. What you don't know is that she's more than that. She's my future. We're in Katitan. The ring on Scarlett's finger caught the light. Madison recognized it as the one Tyler had shown her for their 20th anniversary, claiming he'd returned it when she said it was too ostentatious. And Tyler's grin widened. We're expecting. The crowd exploded. Madison felt nothing. She'd passed through rage into something colder. But that's not all. Tyler raised his hand for silence. Tonight, I'm announcing DataVault's merger with Triton Industries. Together, we'll control 70% of consumer data in North America. The deal closes Monday. That was illegal. Madison knew it, and from Jake's sharp intake of breath through her earpiece, he knew it too. The antitrust violations alone. Now, Tyler's voice dropped, theatrical. I know my soon-to-be ex-wife might have opinions about this, but given her recent mental health struggles, I certainly do have opinions. Madison stepped into the light. The ballroom fell silent as Madison emerged from behind the pillar, her black gown making her look like an avenging angel against the golden backdrop. Every phone in the room swiveled toward her, live streams capturing the confrontation. Security moved immediately, but Madison raised her hand, displaying a document. I'm a shareholder, she announced, her voice carrying perfectly. 43% to be exact. I have every right to be here. Tyler's face cycled through emotions before settling on amused condescension. Maddie, you're violating a restraining order. Actually, Jake Morrison stepped out from another entrance. She's not. The order specifies personal proximity, not professional engagement. As a major shareholder attending a company event, she's within her rights. Madison walked closer to the stage, each step measured. Congratulations on the engagement, Tyler, and the pregnancy. Tell me, Scarlett, which came first, the baby or the promotion? Scarlett's composure cracked slightly. How dare you? I dare because I own more of this company than you realize, Madison said, then turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, since we're making announcements, I have one of my own. She pulled out her phone, connecting it to the ballroom's AV system, a backdoor she'd had installed years ago when she'd overseen the renovation. These are recordings from Data Vault's servers, she said as audio began to play. Tyler's voice filled the room. The senators are paid off. The DJ won't touch us. We can sell the data to Beijing without anyone knowing. Another voice. Scarlett's. The pregnancy will lock him in. Madison's too weak to fight. We'll have everything. The crowd gasped. Tyler lunged for the AV controls, but Madison had more. Security footage, she announced as video appeared on the screens. Tyler entering my daughter's school 2 hours before drugs were found in her locker. That's fake, Tyler shouted. Time-stamped, verified, and already delivered to the DEA, Madison replied calmly. The doors burst open. FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn. Tyler Cross, the lead agent announced, you're under arrest for insider trading, conspiracy to commit fraud, and violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Madison watched as they cuffed him, his face purple with rage. You did this. You vindictive. Actually, Scarlett's voice cut through his tirade. She didn't. Everyone turned. Scarlett stood on the stage, her red dress now looking like armor. Her expression transformed from trophy mistress to something far more dangerous. Special Agent Rivera, SEC Criminal Division, she said, pulling out a badge. Mr. Cross, you have the right to remain silent. Madison's triumph curdled in her stomach. You're a federal agent? 3 years undercover, Scarlett confirmed. Though I must say, Mrs. Cross, you made my job easier. We've been building a case, but your evidence accelerated our timeline. The pregnancy? Madison asked. Fiction, like his belief that he was untouchable. Scarlett turned to the cameras. Though the real question is what you knew, Mrs. Cross. The second wave of agents moved toward Madison. Madison Cross, you're under arrest for money laundering and conspiracy to commit fraud. That's impossible, Madison said, even as her mind raced. I haven't. The Vance Family Trust, Scarlett interrupted, established with funds from the Medellin cartel in 1987. Your father's signature, your mother's approval, and now your inheritance. The room spun. Madison looked at Jake, but his expression was unreadable. Every dollar you put into Data Vault was dirty, Scarlett continued. You built an empire on blood money, Mrs. Cross. Your husband was just the face. You were always the criminal. The federal holding facility was a far cry from the Ritz-Carlton. Madison sat in the interrogation room, her Valentino gown replaced with orange cotton, her grandmother's diamonds confiscated as evidence. Across from her sat Scarlett Rivera, or whatever her real name was, looking perfectly comfortable in her FBI windbreaker. Your father never told you, did he? Scarlett's voice held something almost like sympathy. About the cartel money. Madison remained silent. Anything she said would be used against her. William Hayes, respected federal judge, built his career on drug money, Scarlett continued. The Vance family fortune, your mother's inheritance, it all traces back to cocaine shipments in the 80s. That's impossible, Madison finally said. My grandfather was a textile manufacturer. Your grandfather was a money launderer, Scarlett corrected. Those textile factories? Perfect for cleaning cash. Your father knew. He helped manage the accounts when he was at Harvard Law. She slid photographs across the table. Young William Hayes with men Madison recognized from documentaries about the drug wars. Her mother at parties in Miami, laughing with people who'd later die in DEA raids. You were the only one who didn't know, Scarlett said, until you married Tyler and needed startup capital. Then your father gave you access to the trust, knowing you'd never question the source. He said it was from government bond and spawn, Madison whispered. He lied. Just like he lied when he said he'd help you with the Tyler. He couldn't risk exposure. Madison's phone, now evidence, buzzed on the table. Scarlett glanced at it. Your children are here, she said. They want to see you. Hope flared in Madison's chest. Emma and Lucas? Should I bring them in? Madison nodded desperately. The door opened, and her children walked in. But their faces were cold, foreign. "Mom," Emma said, and the words sounded like an accusation. "How could you?" "Emma, sweetheart." "The FBI showed us everything, Bob," Lucas interrupted, his 13-year-old voice cracking. "The accounts, the bribes, you used our college funds to pay off senators." "That's not true." "We saw the signatures, Mom." Emma's tears were flowing now. "Your signatures on everything. Dad might be bad, but you're worse. You're a liar." Madison reached for them, but they stepped back. The rejection was physical, visceral. "We're living with Aunt Catherine," Lucas said. "We don't want to see you again." They left without looking back. Madison sat in the silence, something inside her breaking with an almost audible snap. "They'll understand eventually," Scarlett said. Madison looked at her, really looked at her. "You're enjoying this." "I'm doing my job." "No," Madison's voice was steady despite the tears. "This is personal." "Why?" Scarlett's professional mask slipped for just a moment. "My father was DEA, killed in '92 by cartel members. Members your grandfather's operations protected." There it was, the real game. "So Tyler was always going down, but you were the real target, the last of the Vance empire." Madison laughed, the sound bitter. "Congratulations, you won." "Did I?" Scarlett leaned forward. "Your husband turned state's evidence an hour ago. He's giving us everything, including evidence that you masterminded the whole operation." "That's a lie." "Was it?" "The jury won't think so when they see the documents he's been collecting. 20 years of preparation, Mrs. Cross. He always knew this day might come." Jake Morrison walked in then, and Madison felt the last of her hope die. He was wearing an FBI jacket. "Hello, Madison," he said quietly. "How long?" she asked. "Since the beginning. I was assigned to watch the Vance family. Getting close to you as kids was just part of the job. 20 years of friendship. Every secret she'd shared, every moment of vulnerability, all of it had been surveillance." "I need a lawyer," Madison said. "You have one," a new voice said from the doorway. Marcus Sterling walked in, Tyler's mentor, the man she'd thought was her only ally on the board. "Marcus?" Madison couldn't process his presence. "Your father hired me," Marcus said, sitting down. "Not for you, for himself, to ensure that if this day came, the family's other interests would be protected." "Other interests?" "Your mother's in Switzerland. The extradition treaties are complex. Your brother's holdings in Singapore are untouchable. You, however, are what we call a necessary sacrifice." Madison understood then. She'd never had allies. She'd only had handlers. The psychiatric evaluation ward was Madison's new reality. Suicide watch, they called it, though she hadn't expressed any such intention. It was just another form of control, another humiliation in a series that seemed endless. Dr. Patricia Reeves sat across from her, tablet in hand, expression professionally neutral. "Madison, tell me about your mental state." "I'm being framed by the FBI, betrayed by my family, and abandoned by everyone I trusted," Madison replied. "How should my mental state be?" "Your husband's testimony suggests a pattern of delusional thinking going back years." Madison almost admired the thoroughness. Tyler had been building this narrative for so long, she wondered if he'd ever actually loved her or if she'd always been an eventual sacrifice. "May I see this testimony?" Dr. Reeves pulled up video on her tablet. There was Tyler, looking haggard but earnest in a federal interview room. Madison controlled everything, he was saying. "I was terrified of her. She had these violent mood swings. She threatened to destroy me if I didn't comply. The company, the illegal dealings, it was all her." "When did this behavior begin?" the interviewer asked. "After our first child, postpartum psychosis that never really went away. I tried to get her help, but she controlled the money. Her family's money. I was trapped." Madison watched herself being rewritten in real time. Every moment of their marriage recontextualized as her manipulation. "There's more," Dr. Reeves said, swiping to another video. This time it was Emma, her daughter, in what looked like a therapist's office. "Mom was always paranoid," Emma was saying. "She'd check Dad's phone, follow him. She made us spy on him, said he was evil, that he was planning something. We thought she was sick. Did she ever hurt you? The therapist asked. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Emotionally, she'd say we were Dad's children, not hers. That we'd betrayed her like everyone else. Madison knew she'd never said those words, but Emma's tears looked real. Had Tyler managed to convince her daughter of a false past, or was Emma performing for her own survival? I need to make a call, Madison said. You have that right, Dr. Reeves agreed. Madison dialed the only number she thought might help. Her mother answered on the third ring, the connection clear despite the ocean between them. Madison, not darling or sweetheart, just her name, cold and final. Mom, please, I need you to tell them the truth about the money. What truth, Madison? That you took your inheritance and built a criminal enterprise? That you embarrassed the family? You know that's not what happened. A pause. I know what needs to be true for the family to survive. Your father is cooperating fully with authorities. Your brother has distanced himself. You're alone because you chose to be alone when you married that man against our wishes. You're really going to let me burn for this? You burned yourself, Madison. We're just protecting ourselves from the flames. Her mother hung up. Madison stared at the phone, understanding finally complete. She'd been the designated fall guy from the beginning. The family needed someone to take the blame for generations of crime, and she'd volunteered herself by marrying Tyler, by being visible, by building something traceable. There is one option, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Madison looked up. Temporary insanity. Admit to everything but claim diminished capacity. You could be hospitalized instead of imprisoned. Admit to crimes I didn't commit. The alternative is 30 years in federal prison. Madison considered it. Life in a psychiatric facility, medicated into compliance. The world believing she was the architect of everyone else's sins. I need time to think, she said. That night, in her monitored room, Madison stared at the ceiling and made a decision. They thought they'd broken her. They thought she had no moves left. They were wrong. She pressed the call button for the night nurse. I need to make a video statement, she said, for my children, in case something happens to me. The nurse looked uncertain. I'll have to check with... Please, Madison's voice cracked perfectly. I just need them to know I love them. An hour later, they brought a tablet. Madison sat in front of it, took a breath, and began her final performance. My darling Emma and Lucas, Madison began, her face gaunt but composed in the tablet's harsh light. If you're watching this, it means I couldn't fight anymore. But before I go, you deserve the truth. She held up a worn leather journal. This was your grandmother's. Sarah Vance. Inside are account numbers, dates, names, everything. The guard monitoring stepped forward, but Madison continued quickly. In 1987, your grandfather, William Hayes, helped the Medellin cartel launder $43 million through Vance Textiles. The FBI knows this. They've always known. Agent Patricia Morse, now Director Morse, was his handler. He was an informant, you see, but informants who get too powerful become problems. She flipped pages, showing them to the camera. Every date, every transaction. But more importantly, the recordings. Hidden in a safety deposit box at First National, Box 1143. Your grandfather recorded everything, including his FBI handlers planning to let him take the fall once he was no longer useful. The guard was calling for backup now, but Madison kept going. Tyler knew some of this. He was supposed to be your grandfather's insurance policy, a son-in-law who could be controlled. But Tyler got greedy. He thought he could blackmail the family. That's why I had to stay with him, my loves, to protect you from the truth. She looked directly into the camera. Scarlett Rivera is an FBI. Check her credentials. She's private sector, hired by the Vance board to eliminate problems. The FBI agents at the party, actors. The arrest, theater. This is a corporate coup disguised as justice. Footsteps in the hallway. Time was running out. The real guest list isn't about Tyler's party. It's a list of every family that built their fortune on blood money. The Hayeses, the Vances, the Sterlings, the Whitneys. 47 families who've been playing God with America's economy for 50 years. Dr. Reeves burst in. Stop recording immediately. Jake Morrison knows where the real evidence is hidden. Madison said rapidly. He's not FBI either. He's my insurance. Has been since we were kids. Everything that's happening is... The tablet was ripped from her hands. Dr. Reeves was shouting orders. Sedatives were being prepared. But Madison smiled as the needle went in. The video was already uploading to the cloud, to servers Tyler didn't know she controlled, to accounts Scarlett had never found. When she woke 12 hours later, the world had changed. The video had been live-streamed somehow. A technical glitch, they said, but Madison knew better. Jake had done his part. Marcus Sterling was in her room, his composure finally cracked. "What have you done?" he demanded. "What needed doing?" Madison replied, her voice rough from the sedatives. "The video's been viewed 12 million times. The FBI's denying everything, but people are asking questions." "Good questions?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Senator Hayes has been subpoenaed. The real committee, not your father's friends. The Attorney General's launched an independent investigation." "Into what exactly?" "Into why Scarlett Rivera's FBI credentials don't exist in any federal database. Into why the arrest footage from your husband's party shows badges that were reported stolen 3 months ago. Into why Tyler Cross is somehow free on bail that was never officially set." Madison sat up slowly. "Tyler's free? He was never actually arrested. The whole thing was indeed theater. Your father arranged it all. A fake scandal to hide the real crimes, with you as the sacrificial lamb. But the pregnancy announcement, the engagement, misdirection. Scarlett Rivera is actually Scarlett Hayes, your father's illegitimate daughter, your half-sister." The room spun. Madison gripped the bed rails. "She was supposed to destroy you publicly, then disappear with enough Vance money to keep quiet forever. But your video changed the game," Madison finished. Marcus studied her with something like respect. "You knew." "I suspected. The eyes. She has our mother's eyes. Your children want to see you." Madison's heart lurched. "Emma and Lucas?" "They saw the video. They're asking questions their therapist can't answer." Before Madison could respond, the door opened. Jake Morrison walked in, but not as she'd ever seen him. He wore a bulletproof vest marked U.S. Marshal. "Madison Cross," he said formally, "you're being placed in witness protection." "What?" "The independent investigation has uncovered a conspiracy involving 47 families, 3 federal agencies, and approximately $16 billion in laundered money. You're now the key witness." Madison looked between Jake and Marcus. "This was your plan all along." Jake's expression softened slightly. "Not mine. Yours. You told me when we were 12 that your family was evil and someday you'd burn it all down. I just made sure you'd survive the fire." The safe house was a modest suburban home in Colorado, a far cry from her Connecticut estate. Madison stood in the kitchen, making coffee with Emma and Lucas at the breakfast table. The first normal morning they'd had in months. "Mom," Emma said quietly, "was any of it real? Our life?" Madison sat down, taking her daughter's hand. "Our family is real. My love for you is real. Everything else was performance." "Even Dad?" Lucas asked. "Especially Dad." Through the window, she could see Jake coordinating with other marshals. He'd been her guardian angel all along, playing a role within a role within a role. The first rule of the con, he'd told her that morning, is making the mark think they're the one running it. Her phone, a new one, secured and monitored, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but the game's not over. T. Tyler." Somehow he'd found a way to reach her. Another text. "Check the news." Madison turned on the television to find Tyler's face filling the screen, a press conference in progress. "I've been silent too long," he was saying, looking haggard but righteous. "My wife, Madison Cross, orchestrated the most elaborate frame in corporate history. She created fake FBI agents, hired actors, destroyed our family, all to cover her own crimes." "Mom?" Emma's voice was small. "Watch," Madison said. Tyler continued, "I have proof. Documents, recordings, witnesses. Madison Cross isn't a victim. She's a criminal mastermind who fooled everyone, including the FBI." He held up a tablet showing bank records. $23 million transferred to accounts in the Caymans under her sole authorization. The date of all illegal trades? Her digital signature on every one. Madison smiled. He just confessed. What? Lucas asked. Those accounts don't exist, Madison explained. But by claiming they do, Tyler just admitted knowing about Cayman Holdings. The trades he's showing? They happened after I was already in custody. He's literally creating evidence of crimes only he could have committed. Jake walked in, watching the screen. He's panicking. The investigation's getting close. To what? Emma asked. Madison looked at her children. They deserved the truth. Your father isn't who he claims to be, she said carefully. His name isn't Tyler Cross, it's Dmitry Volkov. He's Russian intelligence placed here 25 years ago to infiltrate American tech companies. Emma's face went white. What? The data vault servers aren't just selling consumer data to China, Madison continued. They're feeding everything directly to Moscow. Every credit card, every social security number, every private message. How do you know this? Lucas demanded. Because I'm the one who discovered it, Madison said. 3 years ago, I've been feeding information to the real FBI ever since. Jake nodded. Madison's been undercover longer than anyone knows. The marriage breakdown, the affairs, even tonight's video, all designed to force Tyler into the open. So Scarlett is exactly who I said, my half-sister, hired by my father to silence me. But she didn't know about Tyler's real identity. No one did except me and Jake. On the television, Tyler was still talking, but something was happening. Federal agents were moving through the crowd. The grand finale, Jake murmured. The agents reached Tyler just as he was holding up another fabricated document. The lead agent's voice was clear through Tyler's microphone. Dmitry Volkov, you're under arrest for espionage, treason, and conspiracy against the United States. Dimitri's face went white. He tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Madison's phone buzzed again. This time it was so Scarlett. We need to talk, the message read. I'm outside. Madison looked at Jake, who checked his weapon and nodded. When Scarlett walked in, she looked different, smaller somehow, the confidence stripped away. Hello, sister, Madison said. Scarlett flinched. You knew? Our father's good at keeping secrets, but not perfect. I found the child support payments when I was 16. He said you were evil, that you'd destroyed Mom with your greed. He says a lot of things, Madison replied. How much did he pay you to destroy me? $5 million, plus a new identity. Cheap. I'm worth at least 20 in bounties alone. They stared at each other across the kitchen table while Emma and Lucas watched in fascination. I didn't know about the Russian, Scarlett said finally. If I had, you'd have done exactly the same thing, Madison finished. We're our father's daughters after all. So what now? Madison smiled. Now we finish what I started. The real guest list, remember? 47 families who've been bleeding this country dry. Tyler was just one tentacle of something much bigger. You're going after all of them? We are, Madison corrected. You can help me or you can run. But if you run, remember, I know your real name now, and unlike our father, I don't keep secrets. The Senate hearing room was packed. Cameras from every major network focused on the witness table where Madison sat. 6 months had passed since Tyler's arrest, and the investigation had spread like wildfire through America's elite. Mrs. Cross, Senator Patricia Williams began, her voice carrying across the silent room. Do you swear to tell the truth about the conspiracy you've uncovered? I do, Madison replied, her voice steady. Behind her sat Orsa and Lucas, now 18 and 15, their faces proud rather than ashamed. The truth had set them free in ways she'd never expected. Please begin with the Vance family operations. Madison opened the leather journal she'd shown in her video. In 1985, my maternal grandfather, Charles Vance, was approached by representatives of 3 cartels. They needed a way to clean money. He needed capital to save his failing textile empire. She flipped through pages of meticulous records. Over the next decade, Vance Textiles laundered approximately $200 million. But that was just the beginning. The clean money was used to buy influence. Judges, senators, FBI agents. Including your father? Especially my father. William Hayes was recruited at Harvard Law, his entire career funded by cartel money. His appointment to the federal bench cost $12 million in bribes. Gasps from the gallery, Madison continued, but the cartels were eventually destroyed and new management took over. Russian oligarchs, Chinese intelligence, Saudi princes, they all wanted what the cartels had built, access to American power. And Tyler Cross was placed in my path deliberately. My father thought he was recruiting a useful idiot. The Russians knew better. They were playing a longer game. She pulled out a tablet showing a complex web of connections. Data Vault wasn't just a company, it was a weapon. Every piece of data it collected was analyzed by foreign intelligence. They knew which politicians were vulnerable, which CEOs could be blackmailed, which judges had secrets. How many people are involved? Madison looked directly at the senators. At least 3 people in this room. The explosion of noise was immediate. The chair gavelled for order. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Cross. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. Senator Reynolds took $6 million from Data Vault subsidiaries. Senator Walker's son works for a shell company that exists only to funnel payments. And Senator Davies, my father's good friend, has been on the Vance payroll since 1991. Davies stood up, his face purple. This is slander. This is evidence, Madison countered, pulling out financial records. Every payment traced, every transaction documented. The FBI has copies of everything. Why should we believe you? Senator Williams asked. You were part of this system. I was born into this system, Madison corrected, but I chose to destroy it. The moment I discovered what my husband really was, I could have stayed quiet, could have kept my comfortable life. Instead, I spent 3 years gathering evidence, knowing it would cost me everything. Yet you're free while others are imprisoned. Madison's smile was sad. Am I free? I'm in witness protection. My parents want me dead. My extended family has disowned me. Half the country thinks I'm a criminal mastermind. I've traded my entire life for the truth. That's not freedom. It's justice. Jake Morrison was called next. His testimony was clinical, precise. Madison Cross has been a confidential informant for 42 months, he stated. Every piece of evidence she gathered was legally obtained and verified. Without her, we'd never have uncovered the network. But she built Data Vault with dirty money, Senator Reynolds protested, sweating visibly. She built Data Vault to expose the dirty money, Jake corrected. Every dollar invested was tracked. Every crime committed was documented. She turned herself into bait to catch sharks. That's entrapment. That's patriotism, Jake shot back. Madison Cross sacrificed her freedom, her family, and her reputation to expose enemies of the state. How many in this room can say the same? The hearing continued for 6 hours. By the end, 17 arrest warrants had been issued, including 3 senators. That night in the safe house, Madison watched the news with her children and Scarlett, who had become an unlikely ally. They're calling you a hero, Emma said, reading her phone. They're calling me a traitor on other channels, Madison replied. What do you call yourself? Lucas asked. Madison considered the question. A mother who wanted her children to live in a cleaner world. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, but she recognized the tone. The board met. Your actions are unforgivable, but effective. The family will not pursue further action. Your inheritance is restored. Mother, Madison deleted the message. Blood money held no appeal anymore. What now? Scarlett asked. Now we disappear, Madison said. New names, new lives, new chances. Together was all. Scarlett seemed surprised. We're sisters, Madison replied simply. That means something, even if our father never understood what. 1 year later, Madison stood in a modest apartment in Portland, her dark hair now auburn, her designer clothes replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. Through the window she could see Emma, now calling herself Emily, heading to her first day at community college. The television droned in the background, another update on what the media called the Cross Conspiracy. 43 convictions so far, including her father, who'd gotten 25 to life. Her mother had fled to a non-extradition country, the Vance fortune frozen by federal order. Tyler, Dimitri, had been traded back to Russia in a prisoner exchange, but not before revealing the locations of 12 more sleeper agents. Data Vault had been dissolved, its assets distributed to victims of identity theft. A knock at the door made her tense. Even in witness protection, Under her new name, Sarah Mitchell, she never fully relaxed. "It's me," Jake's voice called. She let him in. He wasn't her handler anymore. That relationship had ended when the trials concluded. Now he was just Jake, the boy who'd protected her since childhood, finally free to be himself. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out an envelope. Inside was a single photograph. The Croft estate, now bearing a sold sign. "The government auction?" she asked. "Bought by a children's charity. They're turning it into a group home for kids aging out of foster care." Madison smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "Perfect." "There's more," Jake said, pulling out a second envelope. From someone who insisted I deliver it personally. The handwriting was shaky, elderly. Madison opened it carefully. "My dear Madison," the letter began. "You don't know me, but I knew your grandmother. I was at Tyler's birthday party, or rather, I was supposed to be. I'm 93 years old, one of the last surviving members of the real guest list. Your grandmother kept records of more than money. She documented every crime, every cover-up, every murder committed by our families over 60 years. I helped her hide it all, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. That person is you. In Switzerland, there's a bank box in your grandmother's maiden name. Inside is enough evidence to convict another 100 people. People who think they escaped because they weren't named in your testimony. The truly powerful ones. The untouchables. I'm dying. My conscience demands I pass this burden to someone younger. Someone who's already proven they'll do what's right regardless of the cost. The key is hidden where your grandmother taught you to plant roses. She always said the truth would bloom when the time was right. Burn them all down, dear girl, every last one. Signed, a ghost." Madison read the letter twice, then looked at Jake. "You know what this means," he said. "It means it's not over. You could walk away. You've done enough." Madison thought of Emma and Lucas, of the world they deserved to inherit. She thought of all the victims of her family's crimes, stretching back generations. "My grandmother's maiden name was Sarah Mitchell," she said quietly. "The same name I'm using now." Jake's eyes widened. "That's not a coincidence." "No, it's destiny." Madison stood, pacing to the window. She planned this. Decades ago, she knew someone in the family would eventually grow a conscience. The rose garden at the estate had a hidden compartment in the gazebo. I found it when I was 7, but it was empty. She must have moved the key before she died. "To where, Tvanam?" Madison smiled. "To the only place my father would never look, the cemetery where she's buried, in the roses on her grave. That's a 2-day drive. Then we'd better get started." But as they prepared to leave, the television caught her attention. A breaking news alert filled the screen. Russian prisoner Dmitry Volkov, formerly known as Tyler Cross, was found dead in his Moscow cell this morning. Sources suggest he was eliminated after revealing state secrets to American intelligence. His final words, according to guards, were, "Tell Madison she was right. The real guest list wins." Madison felt nothing. Tyler had been dead to her since the moment she discovered his true identity. "Mom?" Lucas appeared in the doorway, home from school. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said, pulling him into a hug. "Just remembering that justice isn't revenge, it's prevention." "Prevention of what?" "Of this happening to another family, another country, another generation." That night, after her children were asleep, Madison and Jake drove toward the cemetery. In the trunk was everything she'd need to access the Swiss bank box. In her heart was the certainty that her grandmother's ghost was guiding her. The real guest list wasn't just names on paper. It was everyone who'd been hurt by those 47 families. Every life destroyed, every dream shattered, every future stolen. And Madison would make sure they all got justice. As they crossed the state line, Jake asked, "Do you regret any of it?" Madison thought of her former life, the mansion, the jewels, the false friends, the criminal husband, the poisonous family. "I regret not starting sooner," she said. They drove through the night toward a grave covered in roses, where the key to America's darkest secrets lay waiting. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. But this time, Madison wasn't fighting alone. She had her children, her sister, Jake, and the ghost of a grandmother who'd planned this revenge across decades. The real guest list would have its day. The truth would bloom, and every empire built on blood would fall. 5 years later, every case had run its course. Appeals denied. Sentences final. The Swiss boxes were emptied into a restitution fund that paid for scholarships, witness protection, and tombstones no one had bothered to buy. The committee that once whispered about national security signed its last report and dissolved itself by law. Sarah Mitchell unlocked her coffee shop in the small Maine town the way she always did. Lights, ovens, door chime. At noon, a courier arrived with a single envelope from the Department of Justice. Inside was a receipt, all cooperating testimony fulfilled. Witness obligations concluded. At the bottom in small print, the words that mattered most. Case Madison Cross, closed. She went to the back office and opened the wall safe. A worn leather journal, a satellite phone, and a flash drive sat inside. The last relics of a life lived on a wire. One by one, she placed them in a metal tin, poured in lighter fluid, and struck a match. When the flame guttered out, she sealed the ash in a mason jar and labeled it with a date, not a name. That night, another encrypted message blinked on the screen, another child of another dynasty asking for the map out. Sarah typed her final reply. Tell the truth to sworn officers, not to me. Keep records, keep yourself safe. The guest list is finished. Then she powered the device down for the last time and slid it across the counter to Jake, who had come in through the alley. He nodded, pocketed it, and left without a word. Before closing, she took the framed photograph from the wall, the empty ballroom, the fallen glasses, the banner that once read Happy 45th Birthday. She wrapped it in butcher paper, tied it with twine, and set it beside the trash. In its place, she hung a simple wooden sign, The Rose Garden, open daily. On the way out, she flipped the front placard from open to closed, turned the deadbolt, and stood a moment with her hand on the door. No aliases, no shadows, no more messages. The party wasn't really over anymore. It was over.